So first of all, welcome. My name is Claudia Solanes. I'm a member of the Robert Kennedy Human Rights Foundation. This foundation offers a human rights education program to schools and universities across Switzerland. Our goal is to show children and adolescents in Switzerland that they too can defend human rights and make a significant contribution to the protection of our society. Today we have a very special guest with us. Let me welcome Anne-Marie Buzatu. Anne-Marie is a Swiss-American lawyer who has worked primarily in the areas of human security, business and human rights, and cyber stability through a human rights lens. Currently, Anne-Marie is working as director at Security and Human Empowerment Solutions, a new organization which is a values-driven initiative for bottom-up action, improving human security and development opportunities for international and national stakeholders and local communities. You're also working as a senior advisor to ICT for Peace. Tanja Stauffacher, founder of ICT for Peace, connected us, and I'm very happy to have you here today with us.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. Let me start our conversation asking you, what is exactly human security and cyber stability? How will you quickly explain these areas to our audience?
So I will try to quickly explain. Human security is a concept around the fact that basic security relies on the fact that human rights are respected. When we look at traditional discussions around security, it has traditionally been in a couch from the point of view national governments, national security, territorial security. But what has become more apparent recently is that as the government or country or region cannot really be secure if the human rights of the people on it are not protected. And also the fact that human rights violations will often lead to actual conflict. So it is one aspect of the security policy discussion. It's gaining more importance, and it's something that, you know, when we talk about human security, we're not just talking from a state perspective, but also from a human perspective. Mm-hmm. Cyber stability, it's another one of these terms that is, I think still the meaning is a little bit in flux, but it is settling around the same type of ideas of what do we need, what are the different components in our societies and in the whole, what you would call the internet ecosystem, all the different actors, government, private actors, academic, technical experts that are working together to make the internet work. Civil society, we have an important, all of us as users, we are an important part of this whole system. And so what, again, we realize just in a way as we're moving away from just a state idea of security to an idea of human security is that cyber stability also emanates a little bit from the human security as well of all of us who are using it. So we can judge whether or not these systems that are in place, all the different organizations that are operating on the internet, if they are working, if ultimately then the services we have are respecting our human rights. So as I said, I look at it from a human-centric point of view. I wouldn't say this is a textbook definition, but certainly these types of discussions are happening a lot right now. So.
Fascinating. I'm sure there is a lot of interesting points there that we discuss even further.
It's a complicated subject for sure.
Very complicated and fascinating too.
Yeah.
And it's probably growing, it's not diminishing.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Just one last point though, is there are, I think now, I would say, coalescing around certain ideas of what we need to do to have a more cyber secure or stable world. And one of the important aspects of this is having an internet that you can trust in terms of technical aspects, as well as having places where people are safe and not being exploited, not having their human rights violated. So a lot of these discussions are underway right now, we will see where they lead.
Great. And actually in this area is where we wanted to focus today, our conversation. And it's since in the present days, there is a lot of talk about the tracking apps. These mobile software application designed to aid contact tracing in response to the coronavirus pandemic, identifying persons who may have been in contact with infected individuals. What is your personal opinion regarding, do you think a corona tracking app will be the most reasonable way out of this current situation?
So I think they can be useful, but only used correctly or in very specific ways. Technology can be an amazing, help to all of us and can protect our human rights. Certainly the right to health is an important right. And, to the extent that these types of apps can help protect our health and, help us return to a situation in which our health is less at risk, then they can be useful. The difficulties, though, are the potential for abuse in using these apps. So there are, and I will also first say that from a methodological point of view, contact tracing is a proven way of diminishing disease and pandemics, and it's been used more of a person-to-person way to try to figure out who has been in contact with whom, how many people they met to see who would be a danger, and then to isolate those people to stop the spread of the disease. So the same philosophy is behind these contact tracing apps. And the idea is that these apps would be able to tell when you have come into close enough contact, long enough contact with a person to be at risk of transmitting something, a disease. And then if in the subsequent days, or maybe even if it's known then, that one of the persons has the disease, then it would notify you and say, isolate yourself so that you don't spread further. Now, where this becomes tricky is where you are tracking people's locations and you're tracking their identity. So if I'm walking around with an app that's saying Anne-Marie Buzatu is in Migros this afternoon and met so-and-so, or went to a cafe, or went to a bar, I mean, this is an incursion on our privacy, both our privacy and our freedom to associate with other people. So the challenge is to try, so I think it is possible though, if we use technology correctly, to protect that as much as possible, while still providing the benefits, some of the benefits of the contact tracing approach. Now there have been a few different initiatives recently, as you probably are aware, and basically there's some different theoretical approaches or different approaches to designed approaches, let's say, to these apps. One of them is, I would say, maybe a more traditional thinking, where you have apps that feed information to a centralized database where they're contained and owned and held by government or company or whatever entity that is responsible for it. And that information then can be used to basically track where you are, where you went, who you met. And some of the apps reportedly in Asia are functioning this way. I would say from a human rights perspective that this is a real danger, and even in times of pandemic, but certainly after times of pandemic, that those capabilities and that whole system has been put in place to basically monitor where you go and who you meet. There would be a lot of potential for abuse there. Now, in Europe, the trend has been more to go to a decentralized approach to gathering and storing information. And what that means is it's not that the information is held in one place by one organization, it's actually held by each person that's part of that system. Now, there are a couple of technologies, one in particular, the D3PT protocol, which is a way of generating and sharing, I think, if it's working the way they say, minimum amount of information to, again, have some benefits of this contact tracing approach, but to protect identity. So in this protocol, this works that everybody has an app that they install on their phone. Right now, everybody, the idea is this would be on a voluntary basis. Mm-hmm. However, for these to be effective, you would have to have a significant percentage of the population installing them. So between 60 and 80% of the people who are out and using smartphones should have this installed and running on their phone. Nevertheless, the way that it works is that it generates a random ID, which is anonymous. It's not associated with your identity, but on the phone, it's generating a random ID every 15 minutes, so it's changing. And basically, the app would record when you come in contact with another phone close enough and long enough for there to be a possible transmission of the virus or disease. But it just takes a random ID from the other phone, and you take and it takes from your phone. So
it exchange the codes.
It exchanges the codes of this random ID, but it doesn't say who it was, and also importantly, it doesn't say where you are, because it's based on the fact of the phones being together and that the Bluetooth interacting, not that it's tracking you in a location. Mm-hmm. So then the idea is that if one of you would test positive, then you would have to self-report, and then this would be put into a system which would then eventually track your ID, and then they could track the IDs that had been in touch with that ID and just send them a message. You were potentially exposed, again, without identifying them personally. So it would just be a message to them saying, this risk exists, and you should self-isolate, for example.
But that means the person who is infected should proactive tell that they've been tested positive.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would not work. So
exactly.
No centralized place where they know who has been tested positive and they can track them. So each one of us should be having the app, and then also letting a central place know that you are positive.
Exactly.
As long as you are positive. Otherwise,
right.
You can turn it to negative. Huh?
No, absolutely. And I mean, that's an important point. Even as we are still learning about how this virus works, and we don't fully know all the things in terms of the incubation period or how long you are contagious, or nevertheless, these protocols would have a finite period of time that information would be stored on your phone, the different contacts that you had, and then it would be deleted. It should be deleted after, a couple of weeks or 30 days, or, depending on what we find is may be a reasonable time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and probably here comes an issue with the safety, if all this information will be really deleted when not needed anymore. So I know ETH Lausanne was in the beginning involved in this project together with many countries in Europe. And then now recently they have communicated they don't want to continue with this project. Do you know why? What were the concerns for Switzerland?
Well, the concerns, as I understand them, is that the European project was similar, that it had a decentralized ID identification. However, once a person tested positive, then this would be shared with the authorities. And so the idea that this was not sufficiently protective of privacy. A number of the different European countries had, I think, different ideas of how they would like to handle this. And Switzerland ultimately said we would prefer to not participate in that system, or at least some of the entities that were participating, like ETH and OPFL, were saying we think this is not protective enough of privacy rights.
So is then Switzerland trying to find another solution in this area?
So I understand, I read a report yesterday that they may try to partner with this initiative of Apple and Google, who also proposed the same type of technology, which is more protective of privacy. I've heard rumors that it might start in a couple of weeks, but I'm not entirely, 3 weeks, something like this. Again, these are not necessarily confirmed, but there were some reports on that, to that effect. Now, I mean, but I do want to raise a couple of issues around that. I agree with that approach better. I think that's a more protective of privacy approach. Nevertheless, and right now, so long as Switzerland is essentially closed off and we're not having very many exchanges with France or Germany or our neighboring countries, then, you know, that's fine. But, you know, as borders open up, I think some restrictions have already been relaxed, then we will come into contact with people from, you know, other countries, from these other countries that are on a potentially different protocol. And then it wouldn't work. So, you know, this is a problem that this protocol is requiring that both smartphones have the same type of app on it. If somebody else has a different app or a different, you know, protocol, then I could come in contact with them and it wouldn't work. So we have to, you know, these apps do depend that a certain, you know, percentage of people are using them and using the same kind of protocols that you're using. So.
That would be interesting. Also to learn in Europe, will exist only one app, or maybe Google and Apple will develop an additional app in other countries in Europe, aside of the one that are creating the governments, so that it will be possible to communicate also across the borders. Yeah,
and I think these things are under discussion right now. So, you know, it is evolving quickly, and it has to, because this is the whole point of this would be to try to stop the spread of disease, and to get us closer to a time where we could go back to whatever the new normal, or go forward to the new normal, whatever the new normal is. Also a good question.
That's true. And what's fascinating is when you think about many other apps that we are all using, also with Apple, with Google, with Facebook, actually yes, we are giving up a lot of data freely,
yes,
without thinking about it. And now
yes,
we are more concerned of maybe giving this privacy away to governments during the coronavirus. So how come that it's not very logical thinking, no?
I think my personal opinion is that it's coming from a lack of awareness and understanding of what exactly is being collected. You know, all of us, I'm sure, we just accept the terms of service when we install a new app and we say, yeah, sure, whatever. You know, I have found it disconcerting that I find that Google will tell me, oh, you have 10 minutes to get to work, you know, and I'm thinking, okay, this is maybe too much information. Of course, you can turn these things off, but you need to be aware in the first place. And I've also heard a number of people say, well, we're now in a post-privacy world, or we're in a place where privacy doesn't really exist anymore. I think to some degree, we are sharing more information than we did before, but we are also, so many of us are doing it, that it's, you know, it's a vast amount of information. It's you know, it's to databases. But at the same time, these databases are being analyzed, absolutely. So don't think that just because it's a big pool that it's not, that people are not looking at, or some type of algorithm is not looking at that data. I think a lot of this is put through algorithms and different types of AI protocols, just to analyze the patterns and understand, you know, how people operate, and to try to predict as much as possible what they would be interested in. It just should be something, I think, that is discussed more openly, so that people have an idea, you know, that they don't just click on it except because they want to, you know, get the free email, but they actually just understand what comes with that. And you know, then you make a decision. Is the trade-off of my privacy for just maybe conveniences, is it worth it or not? Again, I don't think these things have been discussed you know, more widely, rather than just in a few communities that are concerned about this. So,
and do you think there is a difference there depending on the generations? So young people don't feel the threat as maybe older generations, or is quite similar? So I believe with the coronavirus, many people react saying, that's fantastic. I want a tracking app that helps me stay healthy and safe. So I'm ready to give up most of my privacy if that helps me stay safe. The issue is, once the situation is passed and we are in this new normal, how can we make sure that all this data will be deleted?
Well, I think that is a big concern. What is important is, I think, well, we need to be aware of these issues. And I also do think that if we had more discussions in which you had persons with different expertise, so let's say we had an immunologist or a virologist or a doctor, we had a technologist, we had a human rights lawyer, we had you know, a technical expert, we had civil society and human rights point of view, and they could actually explain to each other all the different, like, what does it mean? Even these kinds of conversations where you could then try to get a bigger picture of what does it mean? Because if you tell me, oh, okay, you're being tracked, your location, I'd be like, whatever. But I could imagine, and especially in other societies where that information, if it were shared with somebody who then wanted to use it for nefarious purposes, or to intimidate you, or to that wouldn't be okay. And you know, so long as we live in a open and, you know, for the most part, human rights protecting society, these things seem okay. But I think one of the reasons that you move away from that is when we give up those freedoms and those protections. So we, again, need to be aware. You asked, like, how do we know post-pandemic? I think that we do need to demand, all of us, that we have reliable information, that we understand what the situation is. So as I was saying, if you get experts that could work together, get exchange and explain, that would be one way to start to come up with that type of information. We also need to just be aware as consumers of information that we should take a second look at a news source if we have any, you know, try to think, okay, is this a partisan news source, or is this an impartial one? Where is the funding for this news source coming from? What kind of, where are the sources that they're using? Are they transparent about it? If they make an error, if they report something that's incorrect and it's brought to their attention, do they correct it? These types of standards that are basic journalistic standards that nevertheless, we really need to know, all of us now, because we have so much information that comes from so many different sources, that we have to also be a little bit of that judge. But I think also more broadly, we should demand that these types of questions and expertise are, you know, we have systems that we trust, that can actually evaluate the reliability and veracity of information, so that we can make informed decisions and choices, and also say, okay, now this is no longer, you know, necessary. Let's take this away, or let's no longer use these apps.
If talking to younger people, because we focus a lot on schools and university, which will you say are the main human rights which can be affected by the current situation? Which are the ones they have to be more aware of that might be in danger, or they need to recognize after the coronavirus is passed?
I mean, in a democratic society, I would say, again, rights to privacy, and meaning also, where do you go? Where's your location? Whom do you meet with? You know, that's also linked to the freedom of association, because even if governments are not tracking us, companies are, and this is something that we need to be, and they're using it for marketing and to send us ads that they think we want to buy things, or oh, you know, so this thing is nearby you and it's something that you would like. You know, these types of habits are being analyzed and recorded for a lot of purposes. Of course, if you're talking in a society where these rights are less protected, or where more totalitarian in nature, you know, where dissent is not really allowed, or then, you know, this type of information could be used against you if you are meeting with someone, or at a place that has been deemed a enemy of the state, or some type of so, you know,
can get dangerous.
Yeah, so we just need to be aware of what we would be sharing, and it can be used, and also keep in mind what parties have an interest in knowing where we go, who we meet with, what are we doing, because then you start to understand what you're giving away and what you need to be paying attention to.
And as a normal citizen, if you think that your data is misused, that they are not deleting it, that they are continually tracking you, how can you feel protected? Where do you go to ask, please, I just want to feel safe. I don't want to be tracked anymore.
That's a really good question, and I'll tell you that one of the things that's being discussed, and the internet governance discussions, some of these are happening at the UN level, and also in other, say, multi-stakeholder initiatives and fora. You know, they're saying we need to have some type of independent place. Sometimes it's described as like a neutral help desk that you can go to and say, I'm having this problem, or I can't find this information, or I think this information is being tracked, you know, when it shouldn't be. Now, these things are not really in place yet. Certainly not on an international level. Now, that's not to say that on a national or even, say, cantonal level in Switzerland, that there wouldn't be authorities that you could reach out to. But it would depend on who, first of all, is at what level it's being deployed, these technologies, and then who is doing it. To my knowledge, we don't have like specifically an office that you go to that's made exactly for that kind of complaint. Mm-hmm. Maybe something that we need to think about.
Because I think this issue will grow. It will never go away, and it will never stay as it is, because it's too attractive. Everything what collects data, it's a huge business for many companies, and probably
absolutely
for governments. But and I don't see there that there is enough offer there for the citizenship to feel protected.
No, and I think the other thing to keep in mind is companies and the platforms that are delivering these technologies are way ahead of the policy people. They are way, way ahead. And, you know, it's not always in their interest that policy and government people understand what they're doing. So again, I come back to this idea that I think is very important. You know, the systems that we're working in now are just so complex and so multidimensional and have so many different types of expertise and are complicated for lawyers, for programmers, for government people, for, you know, civil society, for so many, for technical experts, engineers, all of these things. You know, it requires a high level of understanding, education, just to even know your own field, and then to have enough to be able to work. But all these fields are being impacted by technology or so to have like, say, areas of expertise or groups of expertise that really bring together these different experts that can then together collectively understand the real risks and dangers of that, and also opportunities, you know, of course, to make them better by these technologies. And so and I think, you know, one last thing, Switzerland does have a tradition of this type of approach, actually. So, you know, I hope that these types of discussions can happen here.
And very soon.
Yes, exactly.
Very soon too.
Very soon.
So would you download such an app, tracking app?
That's a good question. You know, I am relatively protective of my privacy. I think I would first of all probably try to understand a little bit more exactly how the app works technologically. What is the data that it really does take? How is it stored? How is it transmitted, if it's transmitted? So, you know, to have a deeper understanding of that. And if I felt confidence that really it was a limited, you know, as they said, the use, I think there's a good chance I would, also depending on what stage of the epidemic we are in. And I don't think that we know. You know, right now it seems like things are starting to, we're on the downside of the curve, but the curve could go back up. We don't really know. And furthermore, you know, this probably it's not unlikely that something like this could happen. Another virus could come. So we just need, I think, those considerations. You know, again, if a critical mass of people would have to download and install this app for it to really be effective.
But I think many people will, just for the sake of feeling safe and protected, not thinking so much about their privacy, but just trying to make sure they are not too close to someone who might be positive. Yeah,
and well, that's a very compelling, obviously, our health and, you know, of us and our loved ones. This is it's something that goes, I think, very deep in us. And one thing that I do think is, in a way, positive, though, about this is that in terms of the information, the quality of information that is being shared on a lot of the social media platforms, because of the health risks, this is now being subject to more scrutiny. It's flagged if it's maybe coming from a, you know, source that might be biased or might not have reliable information. So what's interesting to me from that point of view is that it is, in a way, possible to do that. First of all, that, you know, in many of the, there's now a demonstrated ability to actually have some standards for information. And then the second thing is, like, what does that mean then going forward? And for other things like democracy, okay, maybe democracy is not whether you're living, or for most of us anyway, living or dying in a day, but nevertheless, are we then saying we also need to apply the standards that we get, you know, reliable information about important political decisions and processes, and the kind of that vested interests are not capturing them and spinning them in a way that makes them, you know, biased in a negative way. So I think it could also open up discussions going forward of then what does this mean in terms of how we are, what we can share. And, you know, obviously we have the freedom of expression, and this needs to be protected. I mean, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no doubt about that, but we also need to maybe have, to also balance that against people who express themselves to manipulate or take advantage of others. So who do it in a way to hurt others. And that's a tricky, you know, discussion. And it's not, you know, it's not an easy, like, there's not a silver bullet that will solve that. But, you know, again, I think it starts about being aware. Even, you know, as we're talking about what these other, you know, what the apps are doing or what the impositions on privacy are. We need to talk about these things because they really are impacting us. And for all of us who say that we're not tech savvy people, we're being impacted by it. So in a way, we need to have some, I think, minimum understanding of it.
Absolutely, we agree. And that's why we think it's very important to approach people, in our case would be more the younger generations, and make them more aware of the current situation and that it's possible to change that, no? And to just make possible that the new normal will be also in our standards of democracy, so that we keep that.
And I think it is possible. These types of discussions are happening, are starting to happen more and more, and we need to keep them up. We need to, and you know, in terms of school and curricula and these types of things, this should be part of it. But, you know, it's now it's a part of our human, you know, existence, responsibilities. It's part of being a citizen of the world. You know, we need to understand them. So.
Thank you so much. Actually, I was thinking we need to catch up in a second session about also the freedom of information. You know, you are also writing a lot about how we have to be careful on which information do we rely on. So I hope we have a second opportunity. Thank you so much. It has been fantastic having you. I hope you agree that we will be editing this conversation.
Oh, of course.
We will send it to you so that you can just confirm that everything for you is fine. If we make it public, you can also share it if you want.
Of course.
It has been a pleasure. I think we could stay for hours.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm really enjoying this, and I very much appreciate the chance to talk. And it's important that these discussions are happening, you know, at so many levels. To the extent that you share them with, you know, your students and the members of your foundation, and you know, also that we raise this to the attention of you know, the current and new generations, because you know, we do have an opportunity to, I think it is important to translate these norms and these standards, these international human rights, you know, these things that we all kind of knew and were developed like 70 years ago, and take them and transform them into the way that they work now with the new technologies. So that's an important exercise. It's not an easy exercise. It's not always obvious, but you know, if we want to in the future have the types of societies that do respect these rights, we need to do that exercise. So.
Absolutely, and also even more in our society where we take so many things for granted. We even don't think that we have rights, human rights. Of course, we can talk and keep our opinions. Of course, we can just go anywhere we want and meet anyone we want. So this is never come to our mind as an issue. No. But it can become an issue, and it's important for everyone to be aware that this is a luxury to have that.
Absolutely. I mean, even the confinement that we're going through right now, I mean, you know, this does raise that issue. Suddenly, we have to change a little bit our reflexes. Now, this is, again, for a good reason, for a reason to protect our health, but at the same time, you know, maybe it will also make us appreciate the fact that we do have in more normal times, these freedoms and abilities to just go out, express ourselves. But we need to. They are important. We need to be aware of them. So these discussions are absolutely key.
So we will keep discussing.
Sounds good to me. Sounds really good.
Thank you so much. I hope to meet you in person someday. We don't know yet when, but definitely someday.
too.
Maybe this year still. And really much appreciated for your time. It has been very interesting talking to you.
Well, it was really enjoyable for me. Thank you so much. I mean, I'd love to continue this conversation also, maybe face-to-face one day. So.
This is something we will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
And, wishing you a nice evening, a sunny, nice evening. Huh?
Yes, sunny and nice here too. You as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And take care and stay safe.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Bye. Bye.